This is the Millennials in Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. We interview industry experts to unlock key information that will help young professionals break into the multifamily world in order to create long-term and short-term wealth. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating and written review so we can reach more listeners.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials in Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, John Stober, with my co-host, Fritz Ritter, and today our guest is Chris Jackson. Chris is a managing partner at Sharpline Equity, where over the last 10 years, they've completed 7 full-cycle multifamily projects accounting for over 500 units. In addition, Chris also has 20 years of experience in the technology space, where he brings his tech savviness to all his commercial real estate projects. Chris Jackson, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials and Multifamily podcast. To really begin our episode, could you just give our listeners a bit about your background and how you got into the real estate investing business?
Sure. I'm 44 years old right now, but when I was about 22, I wanted to be a real estate investor. And for 10 years, I thought about being a real estate investor and didn't do anything. So I didn't get started until I was about 32, 33. So I just was analysis paralysis guy for a long time as a programmer, just thinking I was a real estate investor. And then I took action. And over the last 10 years, our company's called Sharpline Equity. And I took all that tech knowledge and I went into multifamily, small multifamily, but I've syndicated. I've done about 500 unit transactions. We currently have a bit over 300 units in our portfolio. We've raised over $12 million and have done 7 full cycle multifamily projects. So I've syndicated. Our largest is 174, lent money, wholesaled. I've done it all.
Impressive. So could you tell us what finally made you decide to start taking action after 10 years of just being in analysis paralysis? What was the straw that broke the camel's back?
I told my wife that I couldn't talk about being a real estate investor anymore. If I had to take action, it was getting kind of silly. So I said, I can't think about this anymore. I have to do it. And I have to get over the fears. I have to take action. And it took me a year to get my first deal, but I just committed to action and I was pretty relentless until I got my first deal.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about what that first deal looked like?
Sure. It was 2009. And in hindsight, everybody thinks that it's so easy, but you don't see it when you're in it, that it's the bottom. And I got a 5 unit, I paid cash, and I raised money for it.
So when you say that it's kind of hard to see when you're in it,
Mm-hmm.
Now that you've gone through a full cycle, looking back, like what are some things that you're going to look for, the next time we go through this cycle that tells you, yeah, things are starting to repeat themselves?
We're in it right now. It's begun. So what I would suggest everybody do right now is you have to, everybody talks about learning and knowledge, but you have to get educated and you have to surround yourself with people that know this business, because you need to put in the time so that you can execute when you see something. You won't know what it looks like, because in a down market, everything changes at a moment's notice and fear will be so hard to overcome. So you have to have that comfort of knowing what is the right project to execute on. So I really encourage people to just start learning and practicing and talk to people all the time. You have to begin your journey now.
So each part of the market cycle presents its own set of opportunities and challenges. Would you say that fear and getting over that fear is the biggest challenge of investing in a down market?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that think about everybody that you know for the last 5 years during an up market that didn't take action. The fear was, oh my gosh, when's the top going to come and it's over. So that prevented people in an up market. So in a down market where you think you've got everything dialed, and then all of a sudden you hear about a sale that is less than you thought, you're going to get confused unless you understand what your business model is, and you have to start knowing where your comfort zone is. So fear is going to be, that is actually the reason the market is that way, and which is the reason that we will be able to take advantage of it.
So besides fear, though, there's all these investors out there that are saying, "Oh, I'm going to make a fortune during the next down market. It's going to be, 2008 all over again, and I'm going to go on a buying spree."
Hmm?
What sorts of challenges are they going to run into if they're not prepared that are going to prevent them from taking advantage of the down market?
Raising equity is going to be a capital equity. Raising money is going to be a lot more difficult than everybody thinks. You need a track record. If you don't have one, that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you have to understand where your leverage is without experience. You may have to give up more than you want to your certain partners to get you in the game. That allows you to accelerate the momentum faster. Raising capital is huge. Lending is going to be a big deal because the lenders are going to really only want to work with people that have the high liquidity, high net worth, high experience. So there's going to be some frustration. I really would recommend people to align themselves with operators that can get them in the game.
So how does someone align themselves with someone such as your company? I mean, you guys have access to capital. You can do your own deals. How does a new person come along and provide value to someone such as yourself?
Well, I mean, it's about getting to know me too. I would say reach out, discuss where one thinks they can add value to us. That's always a challenge for people, but it's mainly in deal flow. If somebody has access to certain relationships in certain markets that maybe I don't have access to, that's a help. There's also, you could have vendor relationships to a great commercial plumber that in a certain market, and those are valuable things.
Okay. So when you were first getting started off, though, and you didn't have your own track record, what strengths and experiences were you able to leverage to get into those first few deals?
Well, I feel like it was my my career at the time. Like I had shown that I was a rising executive, that I had delivered on my career. So it was just that kind of backdrop that like they knew that I was a consummate professional, and that helped. Well, Chris knows what he's doing in tech, so this is a new venture for him. So that he must, or at least we can take a chance on him in this venture. So I do think be an upstanding person and showcase your accolades of your career.
And so did that help you find deals, or was that more on the money raising side? I mean, how did that translate to 500 units and 7 transactions?
Well, that's day 1 to 10 years compressed. So I would say that's like everything kind of stacked on each other. I kept on stacking victories. And in the beginning, though, I wouldn't, it did help me in raising money, but raising money was a challenge. Like I raised money from my family and friends at first, and it took a year for people to believe in me. And then they've been rewarded ever since.
So would you say that career experience then helped you build teams and manage other people and projects?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but I was an introvert. So yes, I became an executive, but I actually will say that my real estate experience actually helped me come out of my introversion, because I was a pretty hardcore computer programmer, like 12, 14, 16 hours a day sometimes, like with my headphones on. And I probably wasn't really on the executive track then, but me stepping out of my comfort zone in real estate enabled me to find my own extrovert. And that in turn helped me in my tech career become a partner.
So do you say this introversion helped you raise capital?
Yeah.
Once you got over all that?
It did, because I was trying to be somebody I was not, actually. I was trying to raise money like an extrovert, and it didn't really work for me. I had to become my own person. I realized that it was going to be slower for me. And what I did was I doubled down on my strength, which is creating very deep, authentic relationships. And I just had to not I couldn't use other people as reference points. I had to use myself. And that yielded very powerful, long-standing investor relationships. And I realized that was my superpower.
Yeah, I've been to seminars where they say, if you're an introvert, go find yourself an extrovert. You're going to need them. And instead, you went and just made the transformation. I think that's awesome.
it took a while. I mean, it was building on victories, like the bricks of confidence start to build. But I didn't want to be somebody else. Whenever I tried to be somebody else, like be the super extrovert, I always actually felt like I was failing at it, and I felt worse about myself. So I abandoned that, and I just did what I thought was working for me, and it ended up being the right path.
So I think something we all hear a lot is that real estate is a relationship business. I'm just interested, you were a partner and executive at a tech company. Are relationships key for any business, or is that especially true for real estate?
They're basically the WD-40 of every business. You have to learn how to develop relationships. It doesn't necessarily mean that even if you're an introvert that doesn't have the desire to become an extrovert, that it's all over. Like, I think that you can develop relationships as an introvert, like in certain circles too. Like you can be an introvert and be the most hardcore programmer and be respected by all your peers and have no interest in any sort of extroversion. I just think when it comes to deal making, deal flow, it's about access and speed and just track record. So I think that the relationship piece of it is where deals actually happen. And that's about raising equity partnerships, getting deals done. Also your ability to manage vendors at a very high level. You have to be able to instill you have to have leadership. You have to instill a sense of that they want to do the job for you and do it great.
So I've seen one of your posts talking about the Great Relocation. Could you go into what that is and what you think we're going to see over the next couple of months or years?
That's today. I just did that today.
I know. I read it. I like it.
Yeah. I mean, you've been seeing, so if people don't know who I am, then they start looking at some of the things I've posted over the last 2 months. I've started to really hone in on my thesis of belief that people are going to flee from high density and head even more towards secondary cities than they have in the past. And there'll be a re-suburbanization across the country. And just as this quarantine has lasted longer than I think some people have thought, and then in different stages in different areas of the country, I think it's permeating people's psyche in the way that I thought it would. And you're having a lot of people now reconsider where they're living and how they can live, because we've also just proven some of the experiments that we're forced with work from home. So now, why do you have to live in X area if you can just move wherever you want for certain tax advantages or even life advantages, if you will, however one views their needs in their life? And the Great Relocation is a play on just what I think is about to have the hugest migratory patterns we've seen in this country in the modern age, because now you can work from anywhere and they're going to be out there. People are just going to leave in droves. And anecdotally, I feel it because of the people I'm talking with that are they're ready to move. They're moving their families. They don't know if they can't do this again if there's another rolling quarantine. Like, people used to go to the big cities because the jobs were there, and they still are. But there are jobs in other secondary cities that have that urban piece that is a need for a lot of people, but it's not as dense as some of the big cities. So you can get the best of both worlds. And this coronavirus has created, I guess, the match to finally set it in motion in what was already beginning to be a huge pattern. I think it's going to triple it, like the Great Relocation.
I love that title. So what does that mean for multifamily investors? Does that mean we're going to be starting to look in more tertiary markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's going to happen too is don't let the pendulum swing the other way too. When I say this, it doesn't mean like the 7-person town is suddenly the most amazing place ever. I think that you have to be very careful that you have certain drivers and certain levels of employment. I think you find the middle ground. I think the secondary cities and those periphery concentric circles going out of some of those secondary cities could see a lot more migratory patterns.
So you said the coronavirus is kind of like the match that started all this, but were you seeing this migration trend before COVID-19 even happened?
Yeah, I mean, you were seeing already like places like I mean, we can name them all, like like the Austins, the places in the Southeast, Atlanta, Raleigh, Charlotte, all these places. But I think that you could even see greater influx into places that are secondary cities, but would be considered tertiary right now. So right on the bubble, if you will, like, I don't know, the Knoxvilles and places like that. I really think that you're going to start seeing just places that were considered very tertiary creep up very fast.
So are there any employment sectors in particular you're looking for in those markets?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for diversity. I mean, I think we're all kind of readjusting to that, because you have service industries. Now you get kind of nervous about it if it has too high of a concentration like that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that you should look for government and healthcare, even higher concentrations, but you can't just use that as a marker for success, because we're even seeing certain areas of healthcare with elective services creating a lack of revenue in that area. And there are certain furloughs happening on the government level too. I think you just have to have a lot of different drivers.
So when you're looking for these drivers, are you looking for drivers that it's harder to work remote in?
No, actually, I don't think of it like that, actually, because I would say that if you can work remote, you need to get to the mothership still.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not a binary guy, like, oh, then everything goes the other way. I still think that offices and companies need, they're going to need an office that people can go to less often, but you still need to conduct business that way. So that still is somewhat of an urban center.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I don't think a work from home concentration is something that I'm considering. It's more about where are the headquarters, the different concentrations and percentages of drivers, population density, and also just I think it's more about culture and livelihood too. Like, what does it offer you, suburbanness and urban? Right.
So since you think that there's still going to be a need for office space, do you think that there's not going to be there's not going to be as much inventory of commercial real estate that could be converted to residential multifamily, like what used to be existing office space or retail shops?
So you're saying, do you think there's going to be more of that supply?
Right. Yeah. So because you're saying that you think there's still going to be a need for office space, but will there be opportunities to take some of these buildings and convert them, or are they still going to be in high demand?
I think that office space I think in this market cycle that we're in, if one had that ability to do that level of conversion, now that's not an easy thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's, like, you have to be a developer, you have to know what you're doing, and the timeline's longer. But I think that you could pick something up for a great price and create the kind of amenities that probably a multifamily community would want, meaning like a work from home WeWork scenario that maybe could be sectioned off, where you can go to your office in your building.
Mm-hmm.
And be private, so you have a bit of the future pandemic risk mitigation, if you will, and do it built to suit in that way. So I do, but I don't think that there's going to be so much demand for that, and I think that there's enough office owners that are going to be like, screw this.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard some operators say that quality is no longer going to be the biggest factor, and people are going to want affordability in downturns, and some say that others will flock to quality. What's your take on that?
Who is flocking to what? The residents?
Yeah, the residents.
You're going to have. I think affordability is number one, and affordability is a bit of a broad stroke. Like, is a B class that is 1,300, where an A class near it is 1,900? Is that affordable? Yeah. So, but if we're talking about affordable, like the below, call it 900, I think that there is going to be a lot of demand there, but you're going to have a lot of turnover in that in that sector. Like I'm a C class guy, a C class, C plus class. That's where I built my career. But in this downturn, we're not really looking at C class that hard. I think that it's right now you have unemployment checks, stimulus checks, and C class for us has been amazingly stable, like a lot better than we thought it would be. But I do think that in the future, there's going to be a fair amount of turnover, and we like the flight to quality as operators. But I also think that you're going to have a flight to quality affordable. I mean, but I think that that's always there. That's not something new. It's like, well, can I get the best for my money? That's the best quality.
Right.
Yeah, I guess what I was going to follow up with was like, have you changed your business plan as we go into this downturn? Like, are you putting in less high quality amenities and stuff like that? Like, are you not putting granite in now or anything like that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that I would just say is there's a few reasons for that. Number one, like we need to conserve capital. So you don't want to just send it into premiums when you don't really need to. Also, like we're seeing still very high demand for we call it, our term is classics with a pop, where you do classics with maybe nicer light fixtures. And we're seeing close to the demand of what we were getting for premiums. Mm-hmm. So why spend that large amount of capital when you're getting so close on a classic budget? So there's that, but also it's just about capital conservation. Like you don't know what you don't know, so you need to be careful. If you deployed it all, you can't get it back.
So I've heard you mention a term also called the CapEx tsunami.
Yes, that's coming.
Could you tell us all what the CapEx tsunami is?
Yeah, I mean, even this is what's crazy is pre-corona, we're seeing a lot of people buy C-class product, call it pre-1980, lots of 60s and 70s built product. And a lot of the operators were just going in and doing nice renovations in the interior and getting rewarded for it. The rents were getting high, but they weren't they weren't deploying the type of CapEx that was needed for these older buildings. And that day is coming where you're going to lose if you didn't. Like you need to do the pipes are starting to erode, inflow and outflow. Windows, roofs, AC is there. It's big time. And think about what's happening. I was worried about a CapEx tsunami pre-corona. What do you think happens during a time in C-class when owners are hoarding money and doing nothing to the buildings?
Yeah, it's hard to get maintenance people and contractors out there too.
Yeah, I mean, you're just not deploying the right types of capital. There won't be capital deployed correctly to the non-ROI or the revenue generating returns on a building, but you need to really do it for about 2 years. And that is going to make some of these assets just go from a deferred maintenance perspective.
If you're buying a C-class product though, especially pre-1970s vintage, how do you prepare for that? Because for the longest time, you haven't been able to buy these at a cheap enough basis where you could go in and do all that work.
Don't buy it then.
So that's why you're not buying C-class anymore.
I'm going to wait until there is enough of a delta where you can do the right things, because we've seen rewards when we do the right things, where you do the roofs, you do the underground piping when it's needed, and you don't have the fluctuations of CapEx during your hold. And we have already had buyers show up like talking about rewarding us for those things because they know they don't have to do it. So that's where like it's viewed as non-revenue generating, but I kind of look at it more as you compress your own cap rate. Like you control your own cap rate, because like I'm not going to let you expand my cap rate because I'm going to tell you why it's worth this.
Mm-hmm. So when you're going into those products though, I mean, how close to a gut rehab is it when you're doing like all new pipes, windows, roofs, and dealing with the mechanicals?
Right. Like you get close, but I wouldn't say that that's where really we've played. We didn't do the unit piping. So I've never done a full rehab of unit piping. That starts to get into like where you're going with like electric and things like that. But like, it's really the exterior stuff that starts to just add up, man. Like the roofs start to get really nuts. Like you start doing whack-a-mole fixes to your roofs and you're just like, like, and then the underground piping is big. Pre 1980, you get into the galvanized main lines and you just get pinhole leaks. And every time you have to dig, it's like a few $1,000s, and you can dig and the excavation company and the plumber's like, we can't find it. You got to dig again. So we've done that. We did $100,000 replacement of galvanized to PVC with main shutoffs and took our water bill from $20,000 a month to 10.
Well, at least it helped your NOI.
Heck yes.
Yeah. Are you struggling to understand how to underwrite multifamily properties? Hi, I'm John Stober, and I completely understand your problem. I thought underwriting would come naturally to me due to my background in finance and accounting, but I quickly found out that there aren't a lot of resources that cover this subject. I had no idea whether what I was doing was right, wrong, or just original. I don't want you to have to pick up little nuggets here and there like I did. So I wrote an ebook called How to Analyze Big Apartment Buildings and Make Them Feel Small that puts together all the pieces of the puzzle. We're also giving away a deal analyzer with the ebook, and they're both completely free. Don't wait as long as I did to start chasing financial freedom. Go to bit.ly/underwriting ebook and get your free copy today. So on the flip side, though, what about like 1990s product? I mean, it's a bit newer, but that's the age where like all your water heaters and your AC units are starting to go. The roof's right. Probably at the end of its useful life. I mean, aren't you looking at a pretty heavy lift on one of those too?
Yeah, you're right. Like you have to look at what did now in that vintage, right? Maybe you won't have the underground piping. You'll feel better about that. But right, it might give you a false sense of security to say, I'm going to pay more for a newer product, 1990s, but the last owner didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're 25 years later, full new roof. Right. Every single water heater hasn't been touched. Those could add up. So that would be part of your review when you're looking at the product, is just like, who is the owner right now?
Mm-hmm. So is there anything you do while you're offering on properties or in negotiations to get a thorough understanding of what exactly has been done and replaced over the last 5 or 10 years, besides just standard due diligence?
Yeah, I mean, you can't go in asking for the exhaustive, like, show me every unit and the log of water heaters. Like, you'll be like, why is that broker never talking to me? But like, you can ask the questions like, okay, it's 1980 or like even 2000. I mean, think about it. Like a 2005 product, you would say to the broker or seller, if you were direct, okay, like when was last, like, have you done the roof? Some of them might be like, we literally just did it.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, we haven't touched it since the beginning. And then in your head, you're like, crap, it's 2005. This is amazing. But like, we're doing roofs in our 5 to 10 year hold. We're doing roofs. So how does that play into our numbers? But you should ask as much as you feel, where you are in your relationship with the broker. I think you have to be careful with that, because sometimes you can be pain in the ass factor and you're not there yet in your career.
So do you think that's the biggest risk multifamily owners are going to face over the long term? I mean, COVID's pretty immediate, but if you're not doing the CapEx and deferred maintenance starts piling up, someone's going to be left holding that bag.
It is. I mean, you are then left at no control over any sort of delta on the cap rate. Like the cap rate is what it is. It's what the market says it will be. And they're going to discount you for what is not done.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And remember this though, too. If you find the right basis though, on 70s product or 60s product, the market still likes to buy that from sellers if you've done the right work. So you almost have to go through and do some numbers where, what if we put like $15,000 a unit in and go deliver this product to the market with a new roof, new water heaters, new windows, everything, and maybe only do a couple of the units? You actually might be better off, because the buyers will realize they have a product that's very unique.
Mm-hmm.
and people love C-class. Like buyers do love C-class for the right reasons. It's just that I don't think that people have that right eye for doing what the building needs. Like everybody's so worried about NOI, but what you should be worried about is cash flow. Who cares about your NOI if the CapEx is all over the place?
Right.
And you're paying that out every month and you never see cash flow. Like, yeah, your NOI was great, but you never saw cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Good question.
So when you're preparing for the next buyer, do you leave any deferred maintenance for them, or do you make sure you square all that away and maybe leave some of the revenue generating items on the list for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think like most value add players, leaving meat on the bone for the next person is optimal. I think if you try to do every single deferred maintenance item, you probably either put too much money into the project. Those are hard to come by when you do every single deferred maintenance. Those are usually very, very heavy lifts where you are vacating a large portion of the complex so that you can do everything. I would say if you could do that, amazing. It's just usually the numbers don't land that way. You have to pick what you're going to leave for the next person.
So that perfectly leads into my next question. How do you end up picking what to leave and what to do work on?
You look at your project at what the most immediate needs are first, and you see where your numbers land. Sometimes you get in the middle of a project and you switch it up. Like, let's do less of the units for the top line increase, and do more of the ACs, and go to market and say, you don't have to do any of these ACs that cost anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000.
Right, and so that would compress your cap rate then. So even though the NOI is lower, the cap rate is lower too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like a perfect formula, but I do think that if the area is selling at let's just pick 6 for now. If it's selling at a 6 or 6.5 rather, and you do a nice product and you say, well, I'm selling this at a 6 cap, and the buyers say, yeah, but it's a 6.5. You're like, yeah, but are you buying your 6.5s with this level of turnkey?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we've been really good at knowing what the next buyer wants.
So will you even look at a deal, especially like a C-class deal, there could be some meat left on the bone, but by the time you've picked it all off, there isn't any left? Or do you have to leave meat on the bone for the next buyer?
It depends on your business model. If you are looking to hand off this product in a syndication or flip or some sort of, let's call it short-term hold, I would highly recommend that you leave meat on the bone, or else you really do have to have a different business plan, which would be in line with what we were talking about before, is like, do everything, it's perfect, but really you're doing that for yourself to buy and hold.
Mm-hmm.
Then you don't have any meat on the bone for the next person. They're just walking in and all they're seeing is returns at all. You don't give the buyer the opportunity to believe the dream.
Yeah, so unless you're in some extremely like populated market, like let's say New York City or Southern California and Los Angeles, who's going to buy a C-class building that's had all the meat picked off the bone if it is in a smaller like secondary market?
Right. I mean, like, first of all, I'm sure the seller who's done that work is asking a massive premium, right?
Mm-hmm. So
the cap rate that they're buying at is low. So, right, you're buying a C-class for a low cap rate without any hope of value add. In those situations that I've seen work best is usually they do all the gross stuff that nobody really wants to do, and maybe they'll do 10% of the units to really showcase to the buyer that here's the proof of concept, but you don't have to do any of this other stuff. So it would be better off to not do all of the units.
So when you say grunt stuff, would that be like the underground piping? Just that stuff.
Windows, roofs, mechanicals, underground, seal and stripe the parking lot, things like that.
So when you do get into a deal though, and then you completely decide to rechange your business plan, how do your investors usually take that?
I mean, we haven't had a situation where we've had to really revamp it. It's actually been more of we're revamping our business plan because it's a advantageous situation we're in, meaning we had, I'll give you a 3-bed apples to apples. But in the beginning of this lift that we did a year and a half ago now, we did $7,000 a unit to do premiums. It was like a 3-bed, and we got 1075. They were at like 825, 850. So we got a really nice pop. Like over about 2 or 3 months, we were like, let's try a lighter grade version, and we were getting exactly the same rent. So there goes premiums. Why do them? Right. And then all of a sudden it was, oh, let's just do, we're doing some classics along the way because we don't want to just do all premiums all the time. Because it's meant to be a longer term hold. We were getting close to like, we were only like we were like $30 off where we were getting from the premiums with just the classics. Why spend that money? Mm-hmm. So that was the change in business plan. However, to address your point though, if you did change your business plan for different reasons, yeah, you gotta talk to your investors about it and tell them why this has happened and how you're going to move forward.
So let's get back to this whole introverted thing then, because that's like right up my alley. Okay. As an introvert, I mean, how do you deal with investors if you're not super outgoing and have a ton of energy?
Well, remember, to get there, you've reached a certain point. Mm-hmm. Like you've started to develop your investor network. You got into a project, so you've gotten through a certain point. You double down on the things you care about, which is the relationship with your investor, and you talk to them individually. You can talk to them in group settings. You just do it. Just stick to what you know and what you're like good at, which is like, I'm following my business plan. We had these surprises, and this is what we're doing to take the next steps. We've thought about these things. We have options A, B, and C. We're not choosing B and C because of these reasons, and we're choosing A. And the investors who, for the most part, are looking to be passive are very grateful for the fact that you've thought about all these scenarios and way forward. And because we love this stuff, thinking of through those scenarios is our job and my passion.
So on the front end though, I mean, I would counter the front end is like the fun stuff though. That's what everyone's like selling courses on, go like raise $10 million in 90 days from your investors. But changing a business plan is not always fun. That's like, hey, we overestimated our pro forma rents and now we have to make some adjustments and you may not get any returns. I mean, do you think that would pose any challenges to someone who's not as outgoing as someone who's like, honestly, like Fritz, like, yeah, like I can go talk to anyone, like anytime, any place?
It's going to be challenging for anybody. And seriously, it should be. But that's where you have an opportunity to forge a wonderful relationship with your investors so your investors who won't be happy about that, but they get to see how you handle this crappy situation. Mm-hmm. Introverts are introverts. It's not like introverts have never handled a bad situation in life and not come through and handled it with integrity and grace.
No, we just don't like to bring it up to other people all the time.
Well, in this business, you do have to be proactive. Mm-hmm. Be the one to talk about it and be ahead of it. That's the thing. Be ahead of it as much as you can.
So when did you just start testing out changing the business plan with the whole classics and stuff? Like when we were like, hey, we don't have to put $7,000 into each unit, and like, are you going to do that going forward?
So that actually was a bit, or it happened organically. I would love to say that was us planning that out, but we were ready to go full-fledged premiums all the way. And what happened was our crew couldn't really keep up with the first phase of the reposition, where there were a fair amount of vacancies that we needed to fill. So they couldn't do the quality of work needed to do all the premiums at once. So we made the decision to say, well, let's just not do all premiums. Like, we still have a reposition where we have the need for classics. Let's get in and out in some of these fast. And what we realized was the demand was so high for the classics, and it just informed itself.
So had the demand not been as high for the classics though, I mean, how do you work around that if you had underwritten all the premiums?
Well, I mean, we're hitting our numbers, so we would have just gone through with it. I mean, the thing is, we can do more of them. Mm-hmm. We can do more turns now with the more money we have. So that's where we win in the end. We actually have more money to do more turns.
So
Because
then,
we didn't budget for every. We also the business plan. I'm misrepresenting the business plan a bit. We didn't like have say every single unit was going to turn premium.
right.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is that going to be a strategy you're going to use moving forward on other properties that you get under contract, where you just kind of start testing out some of the classics and the premiums?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, it's an art. That's where the art is. Like, you go in with a business plan. You have your secondary B and C plans, if you will. But yeah, I mean, I like testing things. I mean, you just don't know. Also, there's so many awesome levers in multifamily. That's why we love this business. Is you get in there and you start making the community better by community development, and you have residents that see what you're doing to the community, and all of a sudden, your renewals are better. Oh, hey, can you just do this $300 worth of stuff, and we'll pay more? And that's not something you can just business plan. Like you can maybe guesstimate that would happen given after how many we've done, but that's not usually part of the exact business plan of we know that this many residents will want to re-up in their classics for more money because they love the community so much. We hope that will happen, but those are some of the intangibles.
So what are some things you have done on your deals to create more of a sense of community?
Well, we always do newsletters. So we reach out right away when we take over. We're the new owners. You make sure that you have your call Ring Central or other, making sure it's flowing through the property manager correctly. You make sure you send an announcement right away so that people can contact. I would suggest doing some of the maintenance work that most likely has been put aside by the last owner. We always actually, in our underwriting, which I've seen not many people do, is we'll have our entire CapEx plan and everything's there with your percentages of buffer and whatnot. And then you have your reserves of varying degrees. And we actually always have a line item that's like 6 months reserve of maintenance above and beyond normal maintenance, because we know there's going to be a pop of maintenance calls that weren't handled correctly maybe by the last owner. And that's a good way to, so you're not, it's like not CapEx, it's like kind of maintenance stuff. And it's really like a great exercise in like, just get your team to hustle and be a yes to every one of the residents to make them know that the regime has changed. And it's a new dawn at the complex. And that's a great way. And then monthly newsletters telling everybody what you're doing.
That's an awesome tip. That's the first I'm hearing of it too. So when you say you're just taking like the reserve for the maintenance, that's just half of whatever you put in your pro forma, you raise that up front and put it into the CapEx budget?
Yeah, like everything, you do all your other CapEx first, and then like I'm picking a number, but like say it's $100,000 normal for R&M.
Right.
We'll have 50 grand extra year half, like for the first 6 months that we know is just gonna like, so you're gonna have 150,000 in R&M for the first year.
Okay.
But it's not like a surprise to you, because that's what happens to owners, and I totally get it. You have this plan, and then you're constantly checking numbers and pennies because like, oh my gosh, the rush of residents want all this done. We have to manage it better. And then how does that communicate and message to your residents? They feel like you're just another one of those owners.
So are there any community amenities you put in that you found really do create a great sense of community?
Every community is going to be different in what you can do. I mean, if you have a pool or don't pool, we like the playgrounds. If there's no playground, and you do see that there are children, like you got to make sure there's a playground. We have a community right now that doesn't have a lot of kids, so we thought about putting a playground in and just abandon it because we were like, there's actually not that many kids, and we don't think there's going to be too many. Mm-hmm. But I do think playground overall as a overarching amenity is amazing.
I've heard dog parks are good when there's not kids.
We haven't done one. And I'm not saying that's not the case that it wouldn't work. It's just we haven't done one.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of all those lonely young professionals that need an animal.
They need a fitness center to get in shape.
Yeah.
You know what we find with fitness centers? It's like, I find that with fitness centers, residents really want them as an amenity to have, and nobody uses it.
Well, I see a lot of fitness centers and buildings, and you got like those brand new Class A buildings where, yeah, I would definitely go work out in those. But if it's like a B or C class building, it's like a hotel gym. At that point,
it's like two like steppers or something, and that's it.
Yeah, and like a pair of 20-pound dumbbells. Like I'll go join a gym.
You know what I think that we would do, because we are looking for more, like we talked about, not really focusing on C class right now, looking more flight to quality. We feel that there is enough arbitrage out there that we can find B plus class product at the prices that we want, that sellers are just recycling capital or whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be distressed, but in the B plus class, I would throw in Peloton bikes, dude. I would just drop the money and just add it onto the cost per month, throw in 2 Peloton bikes monthly, and just let people cruise in there. They'll love it.
So I'm a hermit, remember? So I don't know what a Peloton bike is.
Oh, that's like the Peloton bike is like it's a stationary bike, but it's like totally hooked up to the internet with a screen, and you can do like almost like somewhat virtual reality spin classes and everything.
I think people yell at you while you're riding your bike to make you go faster.
Yes, it's more interactive, hooked up to the internet and all that.
It'll get the heart rate going, I guess. Well, cool. So, Chris, we are running close on time. So I wanted to get to our section that we call the Fast Five.
All right.
Same 5 questions we ask everyone who comes on. And if you're ready, we'll get right into it.
Go.
So if you were to start all over again and you were in your early 20s, how would you do that?
I would realize that I need to raise money. I need to get my raising capital skills in line first.
Very good. We'll go into the next question. How do you see young professionals adding the most value to experienced operators in this space?
Find the deals, find the relationships, find the capital, offer to work on the deals, and don't overestimate your leverage because you don't have much.
Damn kids.
Oh, no, dude, I did it. So,
question number 3. What's the biggest mistake you've made in your career, and how have you since adjusted your business?
Oh, I know what it was. So during the rise of it was like 2015, 16, we were already feeling that multifamily was kind of getting out of reach, which felt like it sucked. And I began taking everything I knew in multifamily and applying it to single family homes. So we bought a lot of single family rentals thinking that we could do single family portfolios with a multifamily lens. I still think that single family rentals are a great investment space. I'm not that guy to talk crap about it, but it's hard to scale. We did a lot and I couldn't scale it. We had 60 at one point and I sold a bunch, did well on it, but that was a mistake. And then we went back to multifamily, redoubled back down on multifamily and got into the bigger stuff. And that was a mistake. I would say, well, it's not a mistake. I learned from it, but that was a distraction.
The single family was, or the doubling down on multifamily?
Doubling down on multifamily was the best thing I ever did in my life. The trying to grow the single family portfolio too large and fast, it didn't. I don't want to do it. I couldn't figure out. I couldn't figure out the systems. Everything felt transactional. I couldn't templatize.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not for me. It's for other people. Some people do really well with it. It's not for me.
Yeah. What's been your favorite way to incorporate technology and social media into your business?
It's been in the marketing, the resident marketing, and the follow-up systems. That is so weak out there right now amongst all competitors. There is so much leakage in traffic and in follow-up and conversion to a lease that it is crazy.
So as a follow-up question, are there any tools that you're using or you would recommend for lease follow-up and conversion?
I mean, that's a little bit of my secret sauce, so I'm not going to give it away completely. But I would say that there are tools out there to just allow you to do it more automated, but not automated to the point where it feels that way to the resident.
Right.
So you need to have the human element still, but you should do it where you don't feel like you're going to jump out the window.
You really are a tech guy. So, last question. What book has been most influential to you along your journey?
So the one that I think can resonate for a lot of people, because it was for me, was a book called The Charisma Myth. And it's like a book about how being charismatic is a bit more about thinking through what charisma actually is. And that was one of the books that really helped me move out of my introversion when I started putting it into practice to become the ambivert I am now. I guess the term is Gino from Jake and Gino, my friend Gino, and a mentor of mine is a bit of an ambivert, and we talk about that all the time. So that book for me allowed me to become the ambivert. I can go in and out of being Joe extrovert, and then I could totally chill in my house for 2 weeks. No problem.
That's what I need to strive to be then. And this whole quarantine has been nothing.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
business as usual for an introvert.
But the thing is, though, let me ask you, I'm going to turn it on you, even though we're running out of time. You can edit this.
Oh, no.
I'm going to turn it on you. So where do you want to be? Do you feel like there's something inside of you that you're like, I know that I have more extroversion in me. I just have to get there.
To a degree, yeah. I don't know. I've always felt like really introverted. I was the guy at the party. Like, I like to just go sit in the back corner and hang out with a few friends. I never want to be the center of attention.
Okay.
But there's some realms where I feel like I have things to say and contribute, and I should be the center of attention.
There you go. So that's it, man. That's the piece. You just have to take the little steps. Take the little steps, and then there'll be a couple moments where I actually call it this piece. In that instance that you were talking about, over time, like what started to happen, I'm going to call it 51% of the time versus 49%. In those moments, I became more of a fan of myself than a critic. And when that happened, I was like, it's my time. Give me the ball. And I was ready to do the contribute thing that you just mentioned that maybe you held back in the past because of some introversion frameworks that I think helped me back. So it's in you. You got it, brother.
Awesome.
I've noticed it in John too. So don't let him downplay himself.
It's uncomfortable though.
Yeah, but you're out there right now. You're putting out great content. You're getting good guests on. I read all of your stuff. I think that you're well thought out. I mean, you have a good team. You guys know what you're doing. You're in the right timing of the market too. I would just manage your impatience.
Mm-hmm.
And just consume knowledge. You're not going to know everything right away. I've been doing this for 10 years. So this is my time, and I'm going to make it shine. But there was a time 5 years ago when I wasn't so confident about every single one of the concepts and things. And it took time and experience to have them all coalesce.
I'm just a Padawan. Awesome. No, Chris, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Millennials in Multifamily podcast. If any one of our listeners wanted to reach out or get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
So I'm pretty accessible on social media. You can get me at Chris Jackson on Facebook. We have a private Facebook group called Multifamily Unveiled. I'm on LinkedIn. Hit me on my website, sharplineequity.com, or on Instagram, Sharpline Equity. And I'm accessible. Reach out.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the value and content you provided us and our listeners today.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Great questions.
Thank you for listening to the Millennials in Multifamily podcast, brought to you by Kronos Investment Partners. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and a written review at iTunes so that we can connect with more people. Finally, head on over to KronosInvestmentPartners.com and sign up for our newsletter so you can stay updated on everything we're doing. If you're interested in partnering with us as we find new opportunities, you can also schedule a phone call with us under the Contact Us tab at kronosinvestmentpartners.com.